I titled this Matthew 21 because I think we're in Matthew 21. I'm going to move this like this. There we go. And I'm actually going to go and quickly wipe this off. Watch out. Shouldn't be painful. Hopefully you're okay. Alrighty. Let's see here. I think we are still in Matthew 21. Yes, indeed. Oh, right. So we did verses 12 and 13 on Friday. So it says, Then the blind and the lame came to the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant, angry. And these said to him, Do you hear what these are saying? And Jesus said to them, Yes. Have you not read? Out of the mouths of babes and nursing infants, you have perfected praise. Then he left them and went out of the city to Bethany, and he lodged there. Um, so he gets there, and of course, everyone's waiting for Jesus, and they're not happy. I mean, they're wanting to get at Jesus for anything they can. And so he comes in, and we had the triumphal entry already taking place. A day has gone by. He cleanses the temple, and the children are still singing the same praises. They're still singing from Psalm 118, Hosanna. And so this really is just a repeat in some way of the day before. Do you not hear what these are saying? Which is just like we're in Luke 19 on triumphal entry. The Pharisees say, rebuke your disciples. Like, why are you letting your kids sing? And so what's the deal? Well, they recognize that, again, that these songs the kids are singing are recognizing Jesus as the Messiah. Jesus quotes Psalm 8 there, out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants, you have perfected praise. And what's funny is he says that. And sometimes I think you might get lost on us if you don't do your cross-referencing, is that he says this to the Pharisees. The Pharisees would have had this memorized. They would have known that psalm. And the second half of that psalm is that you may silence the enemy and avenger. And so it's like, don't you know these kids are singing, and this is what they're singing, and it's to silence the enemy. And so he goes, he comes back. It takes a few days. We were at Monday, Tuesday. We're on Wednesday now. Or sorry, Sunday, Monday. We're on Tuesday now. There we go. Working my way through the Passion Week triumphal entry. He leaves and comes back the next day to cleanse the temple. And now he goes and stays there. And then it says in the morning, verse 18, as he returned to the city, he was hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it but leaves, and said to it, let no fruit grow on you ever again. Immediately the fig tree withered away. Verse 20, and when the disciples saw it, which I think it's in Mark's gospel, we pick up is actually the next day yet again. So Matthew just puts it together to tell the story as one. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, how did the fig tree wither away so soon? And so it had been overnight. Day one, it was good. Day two, boom, it's just a dead tree. And Jesus answered and said, surely I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but you will also say to this mountain, be removed and cast in the sea, and it'll be done. And whatever things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive. So, we really have two different directions we could go with this. And I'm going to go the first direction I wanted to go, but the second direction is Jesus again making these mentions about the faith of a mustard seed, moving a mountain, uh, moving the mulberry bush, right? We've talked about this not long ago. Just in short, that obviously Jesus isn't talking about doing selfish things, and he's not talking about all sorts of other prayers. We're not talking about prayers that are outside of God's will. You see, the emphasis of the faith like a mustard seed to move a mountain. People sometimes, I think, get it backwards. Sometimes people think, well, I haven't moved any mountains, so my faith must be even smaller than a mustard seed. That's not the point that Jesus was trying to make. What the point Jesus is trying to make is, if it is God's will to have a mountain be moved, you don't need to seek some spiritual giant, because all that would be needed to move that mountain, if it's God's will to be done, is the faith of a mustard seed. You see the difference? I think people sometimes feel defeated because they're praying for things that aren't happening, and therefore they think it must be their faith that's the problem. And I think, no, Jesus is trying to say, if you're going to pray for something that's God's will to be done, all you need is the faith of a mustard seed. You don't need great faith to accomplish God's will. And so I think it's supposed to be an encouraging word, not so much a discouraging word. But what is up with this fig tree? So he's talking about this fig tree, and this fig tree being withered. Now, you can jump to Matthew 24, and obviously we'll be there in a matter of days. And in verse 32, he says, now learn this from the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and put forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, or that is at the doors. Assuredly I say to you, that this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Now, I'm reading out of Matthew, but in reality, it's probably in Luke 23 where I have all my fig tree notes, perhaps. Not Luke 23, Luke 21. I'm thinking of 21, 23 because I quote it so often. The parable of the fig tree. So what we find with the fig tree is it is symbolic of Israel. You can look at Hosea 9:10, Jeremiah 8:13, Matthew 21:19, where we were just reading. What we find is that the fig tree is symbolic of Israel in the Old Testament as a picture. And of course, Jesus came to the city, and he came to see that there was fruit, and there was no fruit. And so he's crucified, he ascends, and Jerusalem will be destroyed. And you see the fig tree being symbolic of that. And I do believe that it's pretty straightforward. When you start to see the fig tree blossom again, know that it's at the door. Now, I can't look the word up right now, but what's interesting is in Matthew 24, when it says this generation will by no means pass away, it's an interesting word for generation, because it can actually, it can mean a generation, but it also can mean like a race or a people. It's a word with some diverse meaning, the genos, and where you get genes from, right? We have our genes, our genetics. And I heard someone recently make the case. I haven't studied it in depth since I've heard it, so I need to spend some time on that. But in short, this generation will pass away, will by no means pass away, could be taken two ways. It could be taken to mean literally a generation of people. That's a time period, and before that time period is over, we'll see the income. The other way it could be interpreted is taking it not to mean so much a generation from father to son, from one generation to the next, but the people group, which I think if the first is true, the second is obviously true, that this people group will by no means pass away. The Jews, who are represented by that cursed fig tree that we just looked at in chapter 21, the Jews who were scattered all over the world, who people would have thought would have been stomped into extinction by now, you're not going to be able to get rid of them. And this genos, these people, will not pass away before the end. They will be sustained and continued to the end. Does that mean that it's not a short period of time to the end? Well, no, the fig tree still tells us that when you start to see it budding, when you start to see this come back to life, you got to know that it's at the door. It's right there and it's close. And so there you've got a couple things with the fig tree and with, I guess, with the kids coming and singing. But there you go. We will take off in verse 23 tomorrow morning. So all that said, you guys take care, and I'll see you guys then. Cheers.